Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And today I am very, very happy to have with us Purbita Banerjee. And she is Senior Client Partner and Head of Product Management at Korn Ferry. Welcome, Purbita.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that extra time to ask me how my name should be pronounced. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. And what the viewers may or may not know, that the savvy among them probably know that we have green room time a little bit before recording actually begins. It's nothing, nothing weird about that. All the important late night talk shows do the same thing. So but in any event, yeah, thank you for the phonetics on that. I appreciate it. And today we're going to talk about advanced technology and artificial intelligence for HCM, talent acquisition, these sorts of things. But before sort of giving away the store there, I'd love to just, if you could share with our audience, what it is you do, what led you to your current role, all that kind of stuff, just to give them a sense for who you are and why we'll be talking about what we'll be talking about today.
All right, sounds good. So as you said, I head up product for Korn Ferry Digital and really all of the HR platform that we call Intelligence Cloud and the digital products that sit within Intelligence Cloud, spanning the entire employee lifecycle. I've spent nearly 15 years in the world of HR tech, and I always like to say that, I love operating at that intersection of human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And really the last 10 years has been really that, right? Like across all my roles, whether in building cutting edge solutions in talent management, talent acquisition, and certainly, even, parts of that like learning and development, performance management, etc. It's just been interesting how this has continued to blend, right? The best practices, methodology, the human intelligence, the human aspect of it, and AI kind of pushing the envelope constantly, right? And the last 10 years have been fascinating. And I would be remiss if I don't invoke the newest god in AI, ChatGPT, that everyone seems to be talking about. That has also brought, I think, the next gen of more innovations and exciting work that we have to do. And at Korn Ferry, I have that exciting job of really combining all that intelligence that Korn Ferry has built over many, many years, like 20, 30 years, and then layering on top of that the external market intelligence, AI. So it's really coming together, right? The whole unified end-to-end human experience at work. Mm-hmm. And I'm super passionate about this, right? So we have our mission that says we are here to create pathways to success for humans at work. And I absolutely love that. I live and breathe it. And I think for me personally, based on my experience, Korn Ferry was a great place to land because Korn Ferry may be unique, if not rare, that it is one of the only companies that not only solves problems through tech, but then really follows it up by, via change management, putting in this great set of consultants to drive to real business outcomes and make sure that the investments that our clients are making really get to the point of ROI. And that's wonderful. I think I'm super excited about being part of that story.
Oh yeah. And that's a great story. and I share your passion absolutely around, the future of work. I like to talk about the near future of work and the distant future of work and the sort of the science fiction of work as well, and I think we're seeing a little bit more of the science fiction of work come true than I think we were necessarily bargaining for sooner than we thought. And so I'm so glad you brought up GPT. There's a lot of interesting stuff going around there. I'm old enough to remember when Korn Ferry was known mostly for executive recruiting, and you guys have, that organization has really expanded and spread its wings, and it's been really exciting to watch. And I know we want to kind of you talked about it blending, and I think that's such an important point. My colleague Jennifer Dole, who heads up talent management, the talent management practice here at 360 Insights, she and I, we did an internal podcast. Well, for the outside world, but between the two of us, we titled it "Talent Management, It Will Blend," and it was a bit of a play on that. Some people might recall that guy who went viral a few years ago on YouTube. He said, "Will it blend?" He put all these weird things in a blender, and surprising, a lot of things blended. Like I think he might have done. I just think maybe a battery or something, which might not be the greatest idea. But anyways, the craziest thing, then they would blend. And so against that backdrop, talent management is blending. And a lot of it is due to this advanced technology, AI, and other things, where you don't have the discrete silos that we had of the past necessarily. You don't have to think about talent management in that way as much anymore, and that's a good thing. Where do you think AI and other advanced technologies are most affecting talent management and talent acquisition?
So maybe a couple of thoughts before getting into it. You mentioned, the whole science fiction aspect to this. And I think that every day, the amount of time I spend in separating fact from fiction, it's really, really interesting. There's everybody jumping on the AI bandwagon, and there's these waves of things that happen. And we sit back and think, okay, the problem that we have to solve for clients and what problems that clients are solving for aren't changing. You get different mousetraps, you get different tools in your toolkit, right? But let's be clear about not changing our focus from the biggest problems that our clients want us to solve. So that's like I think every day I remind myself to be laser focused on that. So, and of course, this whole notion of talent management blending with talent acquisition is a big thing. So there are so many layers to this. So we can maybe start talking about how this blend has happened over the years, and then talk about how AI has really accelerated that and where it's added value.
I love that idea. Yeah. Like, how did we get where we are?
Yeah. So, and there's been a lot written on this, and this is sort of my take, if you wish, and also looking at how so there's been the HR tech's angle of it, where technology providers are, constantly coming out with new bells and whistles, sure, but then the adoption piece within organizations, right? And it's been interesting to watch that. And I would say that, two big phases over the last 10 years that I've been observing, right? One is that whole big focus on that integrated talent management system, that one source of data where you can have, all the different talent practices are still sort of siloed, but then you have all the data rolling up in one place, so that you can at least do analytics on it. And there was this emergence of talent analytics. Every organization invested in, having a talent analytics team or workforce planning and analytics team that can look at all the data sitting there. And most companies, I would say, have either already invested in and has gotten the benefits from it, and or are investing in it now, right? So this is kind of the late majority phase in the innovation maturity curve, if you will, that more than 75% of organizations are there, and they are reaping the value of having, employees, and you're able to integrate all of this in the back end, right? And I would say the last 5 years is this whole and this whole like employee centricity of ensuring that whatever we're doing, we're engaging with the employees, and that it brings them value. This whole notion of just like we serve customers, HR should be serving employees. And so there was great innovation on better UI, like user experience, and just better workflows for employees. And I think that for most organizations, they are still, I would say, in the early adopter phase of it, right? there was a lot of acceleration. Lots happened across the whole, like the 3 years of pandemic, post-pandemic time, right? The era of digitization. So many have invested in learning experience platforms, that whole like career journey platforms. So there are a lot who have started there. I would say they're still not necessarily seen the benefits yet. Watching it very carefully. In fact, a lot of my focus has been in seeing why, the adoption isn't as great as it was all, supposed to be, and what else can we do to really get there? Because that is important. We have to get that done. But I would say that's second. And I think the next frontier, and this is where AI, ChatGPT, and all of this may play a big role. And what's coming is, I think, two things, right? This lasting sort of talent journey. Even with the talent experience, I feel like it begins and ends. Its bookend is like when someone gets hired and when they exit the organization. I think where I'm seeing is that stretching, right? You've got to think about engaging warm talent pools, and who are you attracting, who are you bringing in, and keeping that warm. And then even as you're, helping employees through the talent journey, and even if they exit, they may return, right? And it reminds me of one of the conversations I had with a very progressive HR leader, CHRO of Smartsheet, Megan Hansen. She's since moved into a new role, but she had said that, I want to invest in my talent, even if they leave, because the brand I create here by investing in them will bring them back again, right? And so progressive CHROs are thinking about it like that. So to me, that's where directionally we are going. Keeping the brand experience live, that connection going. The candidate isn't selected in one role, let's bring them in a different one. If they're leaving, still help them be successful wherever they go, with exit and, the career goals, and supporting them. A lot of companies that do mass layoffs do think about these things, but it is, with the hope that, hey, let's invest in the relationship and with the talent, and that should continue. So that's where, I'm thinking about what would it look like next gen.
Yeah, the exactly. You've touched on so many points. One that you made me think of is just this sort of, with that attitude of the relationship of an employer looking at it as a relationship with the employee, as opposed to the employee being an asset, or just there's some word between asset and pawn in the middle there that I can't think of at the moment. But, really understanding that implicit in that is that, hey, when you left us, whether we had to lay you off because of business conditions or because you left, there's no psychological splitting there, right? We're not looking at you as all bad or all good, right? And so we understand that you're somebody who's going to come back, or that we understand, we have enough self-awareness and enough ability as an organization to look inward and understand that we may well need somebody again who has left for any reason, whether it's because of us, whether we precipitated it or they did it of their own volition. And that's a really important point. One other thing that you brought up that really parlays or dovetails with something that I've been seeing a lot is just that, and I like to say, and this is just really kind of a play on words, but I like to say the employee experience begins before the employee is even an employee, right? And of course, that's what the term talent experience is for. So, but at the same time, we have this term employee experience that is really taken over, and you haven't seen the same sort of preponderance of proliferation of the term talent experience, although it's definitely a term of art in our industry. But that's really interesting too. And you mentioned sort of the two phases that have kind of that have led us to where we are, and one being sort of being able to harness and marshal all that data from talent management into one place to produce actionable or useful analytics. And that I definitely recall that phase. I lived through it from the outside looking in. But also the other piece of it is really thinking through employee workflows to accommodate the way people work, so that talent management could be most well matched to how people work, right? So they could reflect the talent experience in that way. And I wondered if maybe that was is do you think that was the genesis or of the idea that is now everywhere of the employee experience?
That may have been the genesis, but I think the real accelerant came when the whole like digital workplace started, right? 3 years ago. Is it 3 years ago? Yeah. So it was what happened was all employees suddenly felt like they didn't have an anchor. They weren't going into the office, so they weren't really meeting people, and they were all in the digital world. And organizations had to instantly think about, well, how am I going to engage people when I don't see them every day? And what are they looking for? And at the same time, I think there was also this whole like entry of the Gen Z workforce. I think both of these really changed employee expectations from employers and employer expectations of employees, right? Being with an organization is no longer that sticky. People keep moving around, which is the whole notion of they may move around and potentially come back, right? Maybe as a leader one day, maybe as a different role. So this whole concept of an alumni of an organization, I think, is a powerful one, that you've invested in someone so much. Don't think about how you might at some point in a different way, in a different world, they can come together. The other thing was the B2C world, right? Employee expectations from being on all of the social media platforms and everything else that they're doing and learning elsewhere. What they expect out of the enterprise has changed completely. And there was a lot of this notion around, we need to be more B2C focused, and, we need to design with the employee in mind. And so that happened quite a bit over the last 5 years too, I would say. And where we're sitting on right now, and something that I feel has to get reconciled, is this convergence of the B2B world and the B2C world, right? And I'm seeing that a little bit on the learning side already, right? Think of some of the big players like Udacity, Udemy, others, right? They've got this whole like learning marketplace where employees or anyone really can go in and learn. They also have their enterprise offerings, right? But imagine an employee working at an organization and they invest a bunch of their time in learning, learning new skills, getting assessed, getting feedback, getting new experiences, and then they leave and go to another organization. What happens to all of their history? So if you really want to make it employee centric, wouldn't you carry their profile and their achievements, accomplishments into the next role, right? And we have to solve the who pays for it part of it, sure, right? As a business model and what happens right next, and there's privacy and everything. But that is a problem. Like when you've invested, the organization has invested and the employee has invested in that time, effort to get upskilled, employees would want to carry it, right? So there's been this notion
like
of
a digital wallet or like a digital suitcase. Yeah.
So that's another one, that if we can crack the nut on that and crack the business model around it, I think a lot of HR tech vendors would be pouncing on that opportunity.
I think you're right about that. And that's really interesting. This might be a good segue into is I know we want to talk about how learning and the content for it fit into the equation now that talent acquisition and talent management are kind of really, there's no clearly defined sort of beyond crossing the Rubicon of officially being an employee of the company versus a candidate, right? Beyond that, there's a real sort of blending of stuff that's, that sort of a mixing and combination of things that's happening, a blurring of the lines. How does learning and how do learning and the content for it kind of fit into that equation in terms of, yeah.
So, I think to answer that, let's talk about how talent management and talent acquisition blending has been happening, right? And there are two aspects to this answer. There is the technology aspect to this answer and the employee candidate focused aspect of this. And then what's happening with the HR function itself. Right? Like we can solve for that, having a common data source, having everything to be in a source of truth, one single platform, the continuing employee experience and everything. But you really can't solve for the way HR teams are structured unless HR organizations restructure themselves.
Mm.
So what I'm finding is, I think technology is way ahead in wanting to break down the silos, right? And I think organizations and the seniors in the organizations probably want to break down the silos. But if you really look into the roles and responsibilities, it feels like, and like an assembly line, right? There's specialists doing the same thing over and over again because they're really great at it, versus really walking alongside an employee throughout the employee life cycle, right? So you have a lot of specialists who see one aspect of the process still sort of in a silo, because also the KPIs are still not necessarily aligned, right? So the person that has to fill a role, their KPIs are about getting that role filled.
Yeah.
And sure, you may talk about quality of hire and all that, but there is always the, in 1 month, 2 months, someone says, yes, I'm satisfied with this new hire. And, you say great quality of hire, versus somebody who's an L&D specialist, right? Or someone in talent management, right? How are their KPIs being measured?
Mm.
So, and I feel like a lot of the time, the engagement, attrition, or whatever falls into the manager bucket, right? When they're managing the employee, not necessarily, not necessarily at those specialists. So you still have this assembly line where they're handing off, the employee from one bucket to the next, and they're all trying to solve for their area. And unless that looks different, like that's not a human-centric design. Like if you're
Yeah.
going to do technology and process in a human-centric design, you also have to structure the team in a human-centric design. And when that happens, you can really break down the silos and truly blend.
Mm.
And no longer pie in the sky philosophy here, because honestly, with Chat GPT, I see Chat GPT could be, the specialist over the shoulder, right? You can get Chat GPT to do a lot of the tasks around, let's say, targeted sourcing, personalized messaging, campaigns.
Mm.
There's so many places in which you can leverage Chat GPT that you don't have to be an expert sourcer necessarily to be able to do sourcing and hiring. Neither do you have to be an L&D specialist to be able to truly analyze the data and be able to say, well, what should employees be focused on, what skills are trending, what do they need to do, etc. So perhaps there is a utopian world where you have more of that, like HR generalists that are working on making employees successful, and they have a group of employees that they are working with, like the HR business partner kind of model, and they really do manage end to end. There still may be some specialists sitting behind the scenes in certain areas, maybe in analytics or workforce planning, or maybe there are certain parts, but largely that you can really truly break the silos, have consistent KPIs for what the business cares about, and organize that way.
Oh, yeah. That's really, really interesting. This idea that it hadn't occurred to me. So thank you. This sort of this legacy team, or this legacy HR organizational framework that's sort of lagging, I think is what I'm hearing you say. You have, benefits administration specialists, you have payroll specialists or administrators, you have, you know, depending on the size of the organization, someone whose charter is talent management, VP of talent management. And why don't we should be moving toward, I'm sort of reiterating what you said, or sort of paraphrasing, let's move toward a model where we have just people specialists, right? And I'm thinking through, what would that look like? Well, maybe depending, maybe there's a golden ratio for HR people to employee full headcount. Each HR person as a people specialist is assigned a certain percentage of the employee population, or a certain demographic of the employee population, and it's soup to nuts. It's every talent acquisition all the way through to payroll and separation even, right? And that to me is super interesting. there are some really interesting sort of progressive minded um, employers out there. One of them is actually a vendor in the space, Unit 4. And we actually just recorded an episode of the podcast with their CEO, Mike Etling. It's going to be going live later this week. And we talked about when he went in there, and he was at Northgate Arinzo way back, and he's been at SAP Success Factors, leading that I think it was just before he joined Unit 4. But anyways, point being is he's a very sort of uh, you know future thinking sort of fellow, and he renamed the HR department the People Success Department.
Love it. Love it. Right? Like, the customer, you sold, like you had account managers, you had hunters, farmers, right? And then there was the client success that emerged. And, it's a similar analogy. Why not? Why not have a people success?
I love it too. Go ahead.
And here's the thing, right? It's not so new. Like there are like small, medium-sized companies have that as their HR team. You don't have all the specialists who are, working on all the different departments, right? It's only when organizations become larger that they have that kind of a set up. And honestly, through AI and Chat GPT, you can have a similar model as a small and medium-sized HR department might have, and be able to do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also shifts the mindset. There's sort of a demarcation, I think, really in the HR, in the practice of HR, where there's you have your operational HR, and then you have your strategic HR. We here at 360 Insights, we call it concrete and abstract HCM or HR, whichever. I know those aren't interchangeable, those two terms, but it's lots of overlap. But it's the stuff that's easily quantifiable in terms of labor expended. It fits into an accounting spreadsheet very easily. But then you have that strategic or abstract stuff, which has to do with the employee experience, employee engagement, employee sentiment, employer brand, and culture. And that's all stuff that doesn't necessarily translate to an actual number, because you can't actually, it's a different number for everybody. But the assumption is really important, the really important postulate to accept is that it's always going to, the better those things are, it's whatever the number will be, it will be greater than zero. And so it's going to be good for the business. And this is a conversation we have with a lot of folks, and I'm sort of on an unofficial mission as an industry analyst to kind of advocate for this idea. And I'm not the only one. There are others that are doing the same, advocating for this same thing. Yeah. So it's really, really interesting. Oh, I lost it. There was something on that you said a few minutes ago that was related to this, or there was another point that you made, and maybe we'll get back to it. Maybe it'll come back to me. This is really, really interesting. Just in terms of, let's play devil's advocate for a minute here. Is there anything about these two domains of HCM, talent management and talent acquisition, that should continue to remain separate, or that aren't, but you wish would?
I really
Maybe
don't.
not.
I feel like there are, as I said, that there are the siloed operations, but I do wish that they do combine. So I think it's more of a, I don't believe that they should be separate. The only thing that I feel really, deserves specialists is, those folks that actually look at it end to end, like strategic HR or talent analytics folks or workforce planning, that sure, you can have them do their work by, they're really focused on gathering data, that they are not necessarily the ones managing the people experience. So they can stay in their world where they become more of the shared service really for the HR people, success people, let's say, right? And so that could remain separate, but I think every other role and process within talent acquisition and talent management, I think, benefits from really coming together and supporting that entire journey. And it's a long time coming. If anything, I feel like I think technology is probably a little bit ahead of adoption. And and the other thing is, you know, the last 2 3 years has been so much talk about employee experience that it almost takes an altruistic uh, you know, mode, but
Yeah.
it is actually good business sense. It's not just about doing, you know, like I mentioned, the engaging with employees even after they've exited. That is a good business move. It is, you've invested in this person, you've, you know, gotten them aligned to your culture, they have spent time in your organization and contributed. Why wouldn't you invest in them a little bit longer and see if they might be willing, after gathering other experiences and skills, come back and add more value to your organization? So I think each of these things actually have a good business case around it. So you know, honestly, I don't think anything should you know, be kept separate between talent acquisition and talent management, and they should really, you know, look at either blending and at a minimum leveraging the same technology tools and everything. Because when they don't, so I've seen examples of fairly, again, I would say progressive organizations that have made those investments in, you know, the employee experience. I'm not even kidding that there are probably 8 different tools that they're expecting their employees and managers to log into. Well, even if not log into, like go into different places, right? So go somewhere to look at open projects in the talent marketplace, go somewhere else to go learn based on skills, go somewhere else to see what open jobs exist in the organization, go somewhere else to see what their career path should look like. So it's still pretty disparate even after organizations have made that investment. And that's because the L&D leader probably made an investment in a learning experience management system, right? An LXP. And the head of TA went and made an investment in an internal mobility and a recruiting software. And, you know, like a talent management person went and made an investment in talent marketplace. But if they don't invest in this in a consistent manner, and by ensuring that you ultimately think about, hey, you just brought in 3 different tools for your employees to get after, that's not going to work. So again, I think I don't have anything that I would say should remain separate.
Yeah, you know, our friends over at Leap Gen, they talk about the whole employee, I think, or the whole employee. I think that's the term they use, and it's, you know, why not think about the whole well, there's a term again, employee experience, but the whole employment, you know, maybe something like that, you know, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, again, going back to that's a good business practice to engage with that person that has left, no matter how they've left. You know, that's just kind of disavowing the assumption that this was there was an unrealized benefit from this investment. You know, maybe just the benefit will come later. You never know. So that's really, really important. I love what you have to say about, and I'm looking at the time and we don't have much more, but one thing that you mentioned was, you know, how Chat GPT can help with these, help kind of in the nooks and crannies here, and help to sort of blend everything and maybe help people success departments, you know, move away from the specialist, the narrowly defined specialists to, you know, the people specialists. And I think there's a lot of application that will be many applications that will emerge for generative AI. I read this is a little bit of a fastball, or it's coming from left field or whatever, and you know, but I read it, and I don't know the answer, but I read a headline the other day, and I didn't read the article because I was busy, but it was really interesting. It said it was a VC venture capitalist in the space saying that, you know, generative AI is great, but the real rubber meets the road with autonomous AI. And I'm thinking about automation and all this kind of stuff. Do you have any thoughts around the different kinds of AI that are that are kind of emerging and how they
I don't know about autonomous AI. I will make a note and go find out about it. I was almost worried that you would say that the article name you read was, one of my articles that you did not go and
no.
read. But no, I will go and look into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff. I don't know much about it either, but I think the takeaway is that there's so much potential upside with innovation in the space, and how it can really get us to think about these entrenched domains in a much more holistic way. And I absolutely love what you've had to say about that today. I mean, this is a message that really needs to continue to gain traction. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining
Wonderful.
us today. Yeah.
It was really lovely, the conversation, and I think the way you asked me these insightful questions actually got me to reflect more. So this was really, really fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as high praise. Really
It
appreciating it.
is.
Well, yeah, I really admire your work. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.